In the quiet suburb of Enfield, North London, a modest council house became the epicenter of one of the most famous and terrifying hauntings in modern history. The events that unfolded between 1977 and 1979 in this unassuming home at 284 Green Street are now known as the Enfield Poltergeist case. What started as strange noises soon escalated into something far more sinister. Objects moved on their own, voices echoed from nowhere, and a young girl was seemingly possessed by an unseen force. Over 2 years, the haunting became one of the most documented paranormal cases in history, captivating the media and dividing skeptics and believers alike. Was it a genuine encounter with the supernatural, or was it an elaborate hoax orchestrated by a desperate family? The truth may never be fully known, but the chilling accounts from that house still haunt those who witnessed them. The Hodgson family lived an ordinary life in a small, cramped council house. Peggy Hodgson, a single mother, was raising her 4 children. Margaret, 14, Janet, 11, Johnny, 10, and Billy, 7. They were a close-knit family with little interest in anything paranormal. Their lives changed forever. In August 1977, one night, Janet and Johnny complained about their beds shaking. Peggy brushed it off, thinking it was a prank. But soon, loud knocking sounds began echoing through the walls, growing louder and more persistent. Furniture moved on its own. Toys flew across the room, and strange voices whispered in the dark. At first, Peggy thought her children were making it up, but she quickly realized the events were beyond explanation. Terrified, Peggy called her neighbors, Vic and Peggy Nottingham, for help. When Vic entered the house, he heard loud banging noises and described an oppressive, eerie feeling that made his skin crawl. The next day, the Hodgsons called the police. 2 officers arrived to investigate. They were skeptical at first, assuming the family was overreacting to ordinary creaks and noises. But then, something happened that shocked them. One officer saw a heavy armchair slide across the floor on its own. She later stated in her report, "I saw the chair move, but I could not determine the cause of its movement." Unable to offer any help, the police left, leaving the Hodgson family to deal with the unexplained events on their own. Word of the haunting spread quickly, drawing the attention of journalists and paranormal researchers. Among them were Maurice Grosse and Guy Leon Playfair from the Society for Psychical Research. The 2 men arrived at the house eager to uncover the truth, whether it was supernatural or something else entirely. Grosse and Playfair spent months at the house, documenting the phenomena. They recorded hundreds of incidents, including knocking sounds, furniture moving on its own, and objects being thrown across rooms. They even captured recordings of voices that seemed to come from Janet, the 11-year-old girl at the center of the activity. One of the most chilling aspects of the Enfield case was the deep, guttural voice that began speaking through Janet. The voice claimed to belong to a man named Bill Wilkins, who had died in the house years earlier. Bill's voice described his death in disturbing detail. "Just before I died, I went blind. Then I had a hemorrhage, and I fell asleep and died in the chair downstairs. The Hodgson family had no knowledge of Bill Wilkins, but investigators later confirmed that a man with that name had lived in the house and died in exactly the way the voice described. Janet spoke in the voice for hours at a time, sometimes in a trance-like state. Experts examined her and concluded that her vocal cords were not capable of producing such a deep sound for extended periods. Yet skeptics argued she could have faked it. The haunting wasn't limited to voices. Heavy furniture moved on its own, often in front of multiple witnesses. Chairs would slide across the floor, drawers opened and closed violently, and doors slammed shut with no one near them. One night, Janet was reportedly thrown from her bed by an invisible force. Witnesses, including neighbors and journalists, claimed to have seen her levitate, hovering near the ceiling. Photographs were taken showing Janet seemingly mid-air, though skeptics argued she might have jumped off her bed. In another incident, the fireplace in the living room was ripped from the wall. Investigators described feeling an oppressive atmosphere in the house, as if something malevolent was watching them. The Enfield poltergeist quickly became a media sensation. Newspapers published dramatic headlines, and the story attracted journalists from around the world. Reporters camped outside the house, hoping to witness the activity for themselves. Some visitors claimed to experience strange events, while others dismissed the case as a hoax. The publicity brought both attention and criticism, with skeptics accusing the Hodgson family of fabricating the haunting for fame or financial gain. Janet later admitted to faking a small portion of the activity, but insisted that most of the events were real. Investigators like Maurice Grosse and Guy Lyon Playfair stood by her, believing the scale of the phenomena was impossible to fake. The Enfield poltergeist remains one of the most debated paranormal cases in history. Skeptics argue that the events were either exaggerated or entirely staged. They point out inconsistencies in the family's accounts and question the reliability of photographs and recordings. But believers argue that the sheer number of witnesses, neighbors, police officers, journalists, and investigators makes it hard to dismiss the case entirely. They point to the recorded voices, the physical evidence, and the trauma experienced by the Hodgson family as proof that something unexplainable happened at 284 Green Street. By 1979, the activity at the Hodgson house began to fade. The family reported occasional strange occurrences, but nothing like the intense 2 years they had endured. Janet grew up and moved away, though she later described the haunting as a life-changing and deeply unsettling experience. The house remains standing, and its current occupants have reported no paranormal activity. But for those who lived through the Enfield poltergeist, the memories of what happened there are impossible to forget. The story of the Enfield poltergeist continues to fascinate and terrify people around the world. It has inspired books, documentaries, and even the Hollywood film The Conjuring 2. Imagine yourself in that house. The silence broken by loud knocks on the walls, objects flying across the room, and a deep, gravelly voice speaking from the mouth of an 11-year-old girl. Would you believe your eyes and ears, or would you try to find a logical explanation? The Enfield poltergeist forces us to confront our beliefs about the unknown. Was it a true haunting, a desperate cry for attention, or something in between? The answers remain as elusive as the ghostly events themselves. Whatever you believe, the story of the Enfield poltergeist will continue to haunt those who hear it, leaving them wondering, what if it was real? Would you dare to stay in a house like that, knowing you might never feel alone again? If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our channel for more intriguing content.